Good evening, everybody. And first off, I want to make sure everybody out there is healthy and safe, and your loved ones are too. I know during these trying times. And I want to thank each of you guys for giving your time tonight to hopefully learn a little, share a little. Every time I do these things, I learn a lot myself, and that's why I love the Q&A part of this. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story, something that helped change my life as a player and as a person. And then I'm going to give you some things that I've learned throughout my career that the greatest coach I've ever known did to not only improve me as a player, but really build a connection with me as a person that's lasted to this day, years after I've playing. Some special little things that I think are actionable on every level. I'm going to take you to June 28th, 2003. It was my third year pro in the CFL, and it was our first road game. We were playing a nationally televised game in Regina, of all places, and it was my first road game as a starting center for the BC Lions. And up till that point, my career had been pretty shaky. I was a first-round draft pick of the Toronto Argos in 2001, and I think I have the distinction, the rare distinction of maybe being the only #1 draft pick of a team to be cut in training camp. So I was a first-round draft pick, 4th overall, and I didn't make the team. Now I wasn't put on the injured reserve. I was cut. So you can imagine the roller coaster that was for me, having an all-time high coming out of college, being a #1 draft pick, to being released in training camp and never playing a down for that team. I got picked up by the Montreal Alouettes and spent most of that year on their practice roster, never playing a down, never dressing for a game. And then I got shipped back to BC in week 15 of that season and sat on their practice roster for the remaining of that season. So my first year pro, I was on 3 different teams. I never played a down. I never even dressed. So you can imagine not exactly the type of confidence boosting first year to give yourself the belief that you can make it. My second year with the Lions, I almost got cut, and I had a coach that was kind of an old school bully. I'm not afraid to say it. He wasn't interested in bonding with players, and he just wanted to see what would make you crack. And I didn't do well under that. And there was a moment in training camp that I walked away from the sport, and I left football. I didn't want to take that type of verbal abuse, and I wasn't confident in my play, and everything was going sideways. And I just didn't think football was going to be for me now. I got to my senses and made my way back to the team, but I really was a kid hanging on. I was most of the time 7th man on a 6-man line roster. I was lowest man on the totem pole my second year. I long snapped a little bit. I did anything I could to stay on the team. And so my third year came around, and that's kind of your make or break year in football, as it is in life. You know, you do a job your first year, sort of your pass. Your second year, you should show improvement. Your third year, you're either going to make a career out of this or not. And I knew that. And the turnover in the CFL is such that, you know, you only have a day-to-day job. So by year 3, if you're not producing, you're gone. And we had a full coaching staff change. And that's when Wally Buono came into the Lions, and he brought his whole staff. And that's when I got introduced to the man that would coach me every snap for the rest of my 10 next seasons in the CFL, Coach Dan D'Orazio. And he changed my life. He changed my career, but really he changed my life from the day I met him. And this was our first road game, and at that point, I'd become the starter. I was Wally's starter from day one in 2003, my third year. And camp was hard. My first game was kind of shoddy. Now we're week 2. We're in Regina. Now this is a nationally televised game on the road, my first road game, and this is big. And we were playing the Riders, who were big-time defense at that time and a formidable defensive line. This was going to be a real test on national TV to see if I really had what it takes to be a starting center in this league, or a starting lineman. And it was game day. We were in the Hotel Saskatchewan, and I was wide awake, and it was 4:30 in the morning, game day. And I'm a nervous guy to begin with. I'm not a good sleeper, but I was just up, and I was nervous, shaking, and scared for the game ahead. It was 2:00 kickoff, but my mind was rattling. And my roommate at the time, actually all my roommates were great sleepers. I'm not. So I'd lean over, and he's sawing logs, and I'm sitting there going, I don't know what to do. And I'm freaking out. And so I get up, and I see out of the corner of my eye a letter under the door of our hotel room. And now usually that could be your checkout letter, but we were spending another night there because it's only game day that day. So that didn't make any sense. And I looked a little closer, and it's a BC Lions letterhead envelope. And I'm a nervous wreck. And now I'm looking at this going, all I can think of is watching enough sports movies to know when you get the pink slip in your locker, sometimes it's on a company letterhead to let you know the bad news. I couldn't think of what else they're sending me a letter for. What else is the club sending me a game day letter for? And so I'm like, wow, I'm getting cut. And my mind went right to that scenario. And you can imagine the crazy things that you think of when you think you're getting cut on game day on the road. Like, do I have to go to the game? Am I going to fly home with the team? Do I get paid? What happens now? And I grabbed that letter and it had my name on it, Angus Reid. I had my room number. And I did what any terrified person does when they have a piece of mail that they don't want to open. You run to the washroom and you hide and you stare at it. And you stare at that like it's their college admission that you're too scared to open, or it's your credit card bill that you don't really want to see. And if you think if you don't open it, maybe it's not really there. Because I knew this had to be bad. What good thing could be sent to me at 4:30 in the morning on game day? But finally, like you always have to do with all mail, eventually you have to get around to opening it. And so there I was, with the door closed, not to wake my roommate, at about 4:46 in the morning, game day, tearing open this letter, being terrified of what I was going to see in it. And I opened it up, and it was a BC Lions letterhead, piece of paper. I had a quote. I found this sandlot by the Pearl River near my hometown, Columbia, Mississippi. I laid out a course of 65 yards or so. 65 yards on sand is like 120 on turf, but running on sand helps you make your cuts at full speed. I try to pick the heat of the day to run in, but sometimes that sand will get so hot you can't stand in one place. It'll blister your feet. You get to the point where you have to keep pushing. You stop, throw up, and push yourself again. There's no one else around to feel sorry for you. Walter Payton. And then there is this handwritten note. Angus, I want to let you know how proud I am of you. The work you have put in this off-season has been nothing short of tremendous. You are ready for this. I feel so lucky to have you, that you are out there leading us today. Good luck, Dan. And I had our game plan below. This is from June 28, 2003. I still have it here. In fact, I have all 213 letters that he wrote me throughout the course of my career. This began a tradition or a routine or whatever you want to call it, where every game day, Dan would write a personal note to each of his players, reminding them how proud he is of them as a person, noting things that we'd done that week that maybe we didn't even realize, that are showing why we're getting better, why we are the right person for the job, and why he'd have nobody out there other than us. And I can't tell you what that letter did to me in terms of removing anxiety, fear, everything that I had that was keeping me a nervous wreck. And he let me know right in this note that he believed in me. He knew I was the right person for the job, and that I'd done the work to verify his thoughts. I'd never felt more confident than in that moment. And I was a professional athlete, grown man, but having that reminder from a coach reminded me that I'm here, I'm deserving, and that somebody cares about me. Now, we went out and got our butts kicked that day, and I didn't play very well, but that's just the truth of the matter, that you can't always put your best performance out there, but you can feel good about who you are and go out there and bring your very best. It doesn't always work out, but the lesson I learned that day was that the power in a coach and connecting with your player is greater than any knowledge you can have on how to teach someone how to block, how to teach someone how to tackle, how to run a spread offense, how to run your zone read keeps. All that stuff is great, but it's irrelevant if you can't connect with your player. And if you can connect with your players on a deep level, you will have not only their undivided attention, but you'll have not only their all-out effort, but you will have their ultimate confidence. World. And the nice thing is that transcends beyond the field, because I came to a realization that there are three things that every young athlete needs, and now I've learned that I'm done football, every person needs in life. You need to know you belong. And football, I gave my TED talk on a long time ago, is maybe the greatest outlet we can do for our young players to know that they belong. And knowing you belong is more than just getting a t-shirt and letting you be a part of something. It's realizing that you are bringing value, that you matter, that we need you. And the great thing about football that we all know is you can find an important role for every single person in your program. If you are a thinking coach, You get that kid on punt team if that's where the only place you can put them, and you coach him up right, and you remind him why he is vital to the success of your team. Or you're even on scout team, and you're reminding that person that their role right now is the reason why we are improving as a team. So everybody needs to feel they belong. They need to feel that they are bringing value to the group that they're with, and they matter. Dan, through every note, reminded us that we belong, that we're important, that we matter. And I'll get to the power of letters in a moment, why they're different than just words. Secondly, we all need someone to believe in us. And we need to know that. And it can't be our parents. We need someone that doesn't have to believe in us. And this subtle reminder, whether you're 15, 25, or 35, or 45, this consistent reminder that someone here that believes in you is an unbelievable source of power, confidence, and comfort to allow you to go bring your best, knowing that someone's in your corner. And they don't have to be, but they chose to be. And again, the power of the letter I'll get into is a separator from just giving body gestures and saying things here and there, which are important, but this is a differentiator maker. And finally, you need to know you can. And what I mean by that is you need to know that you can accomplish something beyond what you presently think is possible. And that's where great coaching comes in. That's the whole point of coaching, right? To take someone somewhere where they don't think they can go, to show them that they can by helping them with the tools and what it takes to get there. And that's the real genius that I'll carry forward after football, where people leave knowing that they can. They're not afraid to go out there and attack life after they leave this game. And as a coach, that may be one of the greatest things you can give your players is the knowledge that they can, if they're willing to put in the work and learn what it takes and apply it on a daily basis. Anything's possible. So why letters? Well, in today's world of technology, and here we are on Zoom, and everybody gives social media messages, and everybody thanks people publicly, and everyone gives public shout outs, and we all do that. It's become the accepted way of communicating and congratulating and giving thanks. But there's an old school difference between seeing something pen to paper. And maybe the biggest thing is the novelty of it, that nobody does this anymore. I don't know. But I can tell you that I'm 30. Oh, I wish I was 30. I'm 43 years old, and I have every single one of these. These are tangible reminders of my career, because that's week to week, but it's real reminders that someone believes in me, that I belong, and that I can. And I carry these with me for the rest of my life. And what's interesting about letters are words have to be interpreted in the moment. Verbal words, when you say something to somebody in the meeting room or on the practice field, which are important, you don't know what emotional framework they're in that moment. Did they hear it? Did they interpret it? How did they take it in based on where they were at in that day? Were they breaking up with their girlfriend? Did they just fail a test? Were they even listening? Were they in the right framework to absorb what you're saying? Did they take it the right way or not? When people say, my players know I care about them, if it's only done by verbal, which is important to do, you don't know what they're hearing. You just know what you're saying. You don't know what's getting through. You don't know the messaging and how it's being interpreted. If you do it by body language, which is important, once again, you are hoping that they are interpreting what you were trying to show them. If you put pen to paper and you use the words, I believe in you, you've removed any interpretation or ability to confuse your message and to wonder, do they really know that I care about them? I mean, I show them every day. I pat them on the back. I shout their praises on social media. These personal letters, which I will tell you right now, have never been discussed. I'll tell you the story in a sec, but these were just between him and me and him and each player. They were personalized, and they weren't something to be known publicly. They weren't something that Dan wanted to talk about with us. They weren't something that we were to come thank him for. They were gentle reminders to remove any doubt that we were wondering, does coach believe in me? Is coach got my back? I wonder if coach thinks I'm any good. And there was this weekly reminder, because something I learned from listening to Coach Saban speak at Alabama, and I think it's true, and Dan was the epitome of this, it's not the intensity of your message, it's the consistency of it. So it's not the rah-rah speech where you make people feel like they can run through a wall today. It's that daily or weekly reminder of the same point again and again and again, so your players can't forget. They can't be confused. They can't be left to wonder. Because one thing I've also learned too is our job as coaches is to not allow gaps to be created in our players' minds about where they fit in, their value, Does anyone believe in them, and can they? If you allow a gap to create, human nature will fill it with negativity, particularly athletes. We're scared, we're nervous, we're anxious always. If you allow gaps to create in lack of communication and clarity of the communication, you're allowing the players to fill in whatever they feel in the moment, which is a terrifying reality for a lot of young athletes because they're always worried. You fill the gap with a weekly reminder. And if you do it by a letter, it's personalized, it's not public, so there's no worry that someone's going to be embarrassed that you said it in front of the meeting, good or bad, and they have to deal with the fallout of getting laughed at or ridiculed for being coach's little boy or his buddy. They're just subtle personal notes to the point, and they are very distinct. And I have, this is later in my career, 2011. Angus, I really appreciate the leadership you're giving to every guy. Your words speak volumes to them. You're a positive presence. Good luck today, Dan. I mean, every week it was something, and it was gentle reminders once again that he sees things, he sees what we're doing. He sees that he's letting us know that it matters and to keep going, that he's got our back. All the things that we need in life. And this is, you know, took Dan maybe 5 minutes. And it's something that we held on to for gold. And I know a lot of the players, we spoke about these, and most of the guys I played with, they have all their letters too. And these are grown men. These are men that are in the 40s now, and they look back on these as some of the most cherished items that we've ever had. And so I think that's a key thing that we can do in today's world, where we're inundated with wow factor and with posting and cool things that people want to showcase, which is great. And I know the kids today, that they love that. But I think there's a huge novelty to giving them a quiet little note, handwritten, simple, but the consistency of doing it again and again is going to fill that gap that all kids have. And if you don't fill it, they'll fill it themselves. And youth particularly tend to fill gaps with negative thoughts of worry and anxiety of, am I good enough? Do I fit in? Does coach like me? I don't know if I have what it takes. Remind them every day. Give them a real reason too. Don't make it fluff. Give them a specific thing they did that week that they may not even know they did, and they definitely probably didn't know you were watching, which is going to make you more attentive to watching all your players and looking for what are they doing well. And I need to remind them of that. Make a note at each practice, what little Johnny did today, or what Tony did, and make sure that you let him know, not for anyone else to see, not for public to see. Other points that I had learned through, am I there? Am I okay? Yeah. I'll give you a couple of key other points that I can give you, and maybe you're doing this, maybe you're not. I'm sure some of you guys already are, but there's a couple things that I've noticed now that I speak a lot in the business world that are not happening, and I believe they should. So in terms of communication and some simple tactics that I think if you're conscious to doing, it's going to go a long way to building trust with your players and making every conversation about performance driven and about improving people instead of creating more anxiety, more worry. The first one is with your language. Whenever you're breaking down film, whenever you're discussing improvement of play, make sure that every word you use is always attacking the problem and you're never attacking the person. And I know that sounds very simple, and we all say, of course we do that, but be careful with the words you choose, because I had coaches back in the day that we'd be watching film and there I am, I'm getting my butt kicked by the defensive tackle, and we would generalize, right? The center's getting his butt kicked here, or the center can't get this block done. Center's struggling to get the block done. When you generalize and not make it specific to what the problem is, we personalize the problem. Center can't make this block. Angus can't do anything. That's all I hear. And when you say the center can't make the block, you're not opening me up to how can I get better here. You're reminding me that I'm not good enough. Again, remember, one of the three things that people need to know, that I can, or I am of value. Center can't get the block done. Angus can't do it. I'm no good. You've removed my ability to want to learn. You've put me either in a defensive state or a defeative state. Either way, I'm not interested anymore. I don't feel better about myself. Dan was brilliant about this, and maybe most of you guys are too, but it's worth reminding because I've been around coaches that don't think this through. When we'd watch film, when we talked about a problem, it was the problem that was addressed. And the problem was never me as a person, so we would never generalize the issue. It was never the right guard can't get this block done, the right guard's getting his butt kicked. It was the right guard's right foot needs to get 6 inches over more and we'll be good. So we're going to work on getting that done because you've already shown me that you can do it. So in the center's case, it was the center's left foot needs to get 6 inches more over to make this block. Okay, that's the problem, not me. You have to be very specific when you're discussing issues. If you generalize the issue, you personalize the issue to the person, and you will not have people on page wanting to get better. You'll have people either barking back at you to defend themselves or folding their tents and realizing they suck. And so that's a simple thing, but think through how you are going over improving players' performances, and make sure that you are detaching the issue from the person, and talk about the issue and talk about it in a positive light in terms of, here's the problem and here's how we're going to fix it. And the problem cannot be lumped into the position or the person, because you're going to ruin the psyche of wanting to get better. You'll have people put in defensive mechanism. Sounds simple. I'm going to be around coaches that have done it and done the opposite. And I'm telling you, if you work on removing the problem from the person and specify what the issue was, why it didn't work, and how we fix it, and how we can, you'll have a lot more, probably a lot more commitment from players to jump in and do that. I think this is another one that Dan was brilliant at. And I don't know if you thought this one through, but he never used the word why with us. So when you're discussing about things that went wrong, or problems on technique or recognition, or just general mistakes that you're trying to review and correct and improve, and you want to get the person's honest feedback about what's going on out there, and you're trying to figure out, what are they thinking, what's going on in their mind, so I can understand where things went wrong so I can help it. And Dan, I guess, knew intuitively, and I learned a lot through my career, that coaches that came out and said, why did you do this? Or why did you do that? Why did you go there? Why didn't you do this? That's intuitively, it's an interrogating question. And again, with competitive athletes or anxious athletes or emotional athletes, and show me an athlete that's not emotional, you ask them why did you do something, and it's in a negative tone because something went wrong, you're going to get their backs up. And again, they're either going to bark back at you, or they're going to clam up and not want to open up. It's an interrogating question that is not inviting for people to want to reveal anything. They feel that they are getting bombarded, and they think they're already being accused. And so you don't want to say, Jimmy, why'd you do that? Or why'd you go to that linebacker when you're supposed to go to this other one? If you can remove that word why, it's an interesting reality that you might get a little bit more insight, and players might tend to open up a little more because they're not going to feel attacked. And I think Dan would use the word what a lot, or I'm interested in seeing what, or learning what you were thinking, so I can learn how we can improve the situation. And I would explain what I was thinking. And in doing so, he would learn how I thought. And in learning how I thought, then he can improve how he coached me. Instead of just saying why, most people would just give some answer, or they clamp down. There was no learning process. And I'm telling you, I've been around football for players for like 25 years now. And most of the time, the hyper competitive ones, or the hyper anxious ones, or the hyper emotional ones, you say, why'd you do that when something was wrong? You're not going to improve at all after that statement. You're going to get the shortest word answer they can give you, or you're going to get nothing at all. And so try to avoid the word why. It sounds silly, but catch yourself how often you've been doing it. And again, I want to give asymmetrical observations here, things that don't have any downside. I mean, there's no risk, but try to use other words. It's extremely powerful for improving, I think, communication. And the more you can get players opening up to what they're thinking in terms of when they're doing things, the more you're going to learn about them. And again, I don't have time to go into the deep dive of understanding personality types and learning styles, but Dan went deep into that. So he would realize, who is a visual learner, who is an analytical learner, who is a kinesthetic learner, and he would make sure he layered. Some of our day was on film talk, some of it was on outside kind of walkthrough talk, and some of it was on discussion talk. And he knew, we all did each, but he knew who learned better in each phase, and he would really gear the questions to those people in each of their best learning scenarios. So I didn't need to be a kinesthetic learner, but a lot of our players did. So he didn't talk me through much learning when we were out there. I just did my thing, but we were on the chalkboard. He'd pepper me a lot because that's where I got all my learning out. And he knew how we learned, but that's a deeper dive that we don't have to get into. But the more players talk to you, the more they can explain to you what they're thinking when they're doing things right or wrong, the more you're going to reveal things about how they learn. And the more, if you're really listening, you'll realize how to tailor a little bit of your messaging to each player. When you ask them why, you're going to get short form answers. They're not going to really open up. They're just looking to get out of that question. And so, simple thing, maybe you're already doing it, but I can tell you, even at the pro level, where all that matters is performance, still the goal is to connect with a player, learn about how they learn, so you can coach them better. And that's what it's all about. A last one I'm going to give you maybe is best utilized even in your own meetings. And this has been a real game changer back into my career. We kind of came up with a rule in the huddle. And again, this should be a rule in your meetings. Never bring a statement, always bring a question. And maybe this sounds kind of corny, but I'm going to tell you again, we're always talking about every interaction we should be learning. Every interaction with each other we should be improving. And particularly in the huddle sense, and I know nobody even huddles anymore, but either way, everything's about time is against us, and how do we get better with the time we're given? So an example would be in the huddle with 20 seconds. We had rules that don't bring a statement in this huddle, bring a question. And by doing that, I mean, you're always coming back to solve a problem. You're coming back to the huddle and you need to review what went wrong. Even when things went right, something went wrong. And when you get to your coaching meetings, you're always trying to solve a problem, right? Here's the problem. Here's the defense we're facing this week, or here's the game we're just reviewing, and we're trying to figure out how do we get better based on what just happened. And if you bring a statement into a meeting, good or bad, nobody gets better. And I'll give you an example. In the huddle, simple, like, you know, and it happens with emotional athletes and it happens with emotional coaches. You come and say, look, I can't block this guy. I can't do it. Okay, that's a statement. So what happens now is everyone has to try to Dr. Phil psychology me into, oh, no, you can. And what happens in human nature, and I'm sure we most know this, once we put a statement down, we're going to back our statement. Once I make a statement, I'm going to hang on to that statement. I'm going to fight for it because I've made a truth. I've made a statement that this is what it is. And now you have to argue with me to try to unpack that and allow me to let go. And even if it's good, I'm kicking this guy's ass. Okay, how are we getting better? What's the point of talking then? So we brought a rule in, and I think it's important in meetings too, is, you know, I know coaches, we've seen this go, well, we're not gonna be able to run this play. We can't block this guy. Okay, that's not helping anybody. And we're wasting time because you've already made your mind up. When we go into huddles, instead of saying, look, this nose guard's kicking my butt, the rule was to come with a question. Guys, ideas on how I get my right foot over in front of this guy. What's gonna happen is this. I've invited opinion, I've created conversation, and I've made myself open to wanting to learn how to get better. And I've made myself open to each person's opinion, which is, again, another TEDx talk I gave, but it's on how to build trust, is obviously becoming vulnerable to other people's thoughts. And the way to do that is to not make people fight to come in, but to ask them to come in. And we come in with questions every time. So everything's questions. So all of a sudden the conversation is about improvement. And guys, ideas on how I can get in front of this guy. Or, you know, something went really good. You know, we did that combo block. Guys, that combo block was great. I think, you know, any ideas how we can keep running that play because, you know, it's working so well. Well, good. Now we're thinking, how can we utilize what's good to get better? And it's a simple thing, and I think it's huge in coaching meetings. I use it in sales meetings now when I talk to sales companies all the time. Stop allowing statements. I can't make the sale. I just made the sale. Great, who cares? You know, I learned from my coach that statements are either one of two things. You're either bragging or you're dragging. You're dragging your problem in or you're bragging about your victory. Either way, this conversation now is not about getting better. And you want every conversation within your players, within your staff, and between your coaching and players to be about improvement. And so I would say demand, but build it into a way of doing things where every problem or every issue or every victory gets brought out in a question format. It's going to facilitate conversation. The more conversation, the more we learn about each other. The more we learn about each other, the more we connect with each other. The more we connect with each other, the more we trust each other, the better team we become. There's a whole cascade of benefits of it. But the truth is, the most important thing is each conversation now becomes about getting better, becomes about improving. It becomes about looking at opportunities and options instead of complaining or instead of bragging. And both of those ones are dead end roads that waste time and waste energy and do not build relationships, do not build trust. You show whiners and you show braggers, and those are not good people to be around. It becomes toxic and they become bad meetings. They become very bad huddles. And so that may be one of the most powerful ones I can give you. I challenge each and every one of you, even in your coaching meetings right now, to try it. Again, asymmetrical, what's the downside right now? Try to catch yourself never bringing a statement in. Bring them as questions. Watch what happens. You get collaboration, you get conversation, you get growth. And you yourself enter that conversation now with an open mind. You've brought the open mind. Your mind doesn't have to be opened by someone else, which is painful, which is difficult, which is time wasting. Those are things that Dan always did with us throughout my career. But you know, he did a million other things too, but I want to give you just enough that you can actually take some of these and use them instead of going through so many things that you don't remember anything. But I still come back to the letters, and I think letters are powerful because they're simple, they're easy, but right now they're novel, but they don't ever get confused. They don't ever get left to interpretation. They don't ever have to make sure that they know what you meant with that body gesture, or with that look, or even with that comment after practice that maybe they heard, maybe they weren't listening, maybe they did. But a letter is something that they can keep with them for the rest of their life. So any moment, pre-game, post-game, after this championship they won or lost, they can pull out these letters like I do and remind themselves anytime they need to that they belong, that somebody believes in them, and that they can. I tell you right now, anyone that is armed with those 3 essentials, very little you can't do in this world. And if you're missing those, it's pretty tough. And you as coaches, and this game of football is one of the greatest ways I know to supply those 3 essentials. And writing these letters honestly from your heart in some sort of frequent manner is one of the greatest ways to remind your players of these 3 essentials for life that they can have as they're playing for you and bring their best, but they can keep when they're done with you, so they never forget. And it's tangible proof that doesn't fade with memory or get lost when they're thinking back on things in the jumble of other things. It's tangible proof right here that they matter, that you believe in them. I got them all. And I still look at them frequently. And the way I wrote my coach back a letter, I wrote him a 220-page book that maybe some of you guys have read, but it was my way to thank him, because I don't think there's, as much as you coach him up in person, as much power there is in that human connection on the field and on the practice field in the meeting room. There's a primal connection with having things laid out very clearly and removing of all confusion on a nice piece of paper and letting them know that you're that guy. And so when you enter these meeting rooms and you come with these conversations and you have to deal with getting better, and you use the techniques of not asking why, and you make sure you separate the problem from the person, they never have a shadow of doubt that you believe in them. And they don't have a shadow of doubt that you're the right person for the job and that you can. And so those conversations are just about getting better. If you allow that gap to be created with not reminding of these things, then those conversations get tougher. That improvement in the meeting room gets harder because they're not really sure if you give a damn who they are. And they're always thinking that you don't think they're good enough. And now they're going to guard themselves and never give you their best. And I think that's what this is all about, right? Trying to get players to realize their potential as an athlete, and then understanding they can take that with them and transfer it into real life, knowing that anything's possible if they can give their best. And when someone has shown them that way, I don't think there's a better gift you can give your players than skills that they take with them after they finish playing. I could go on for hours and hours, but I just want to give you a few insights and some things that have hit me the most in my career. And I was lucky to have a coach that understood that he was teaching a person through coaching football. It's not just half the equation, and I'm forever grateful. And that's why I share these lessons, because I think what you guys do is maybe the greatest role in the world to teach our youth through coaching them this great sport. So I want to leave by thanking you guys, but I like to be here as a resource. And again, I'm just a resource as a kid that was lucky to have a great coach and sharing some of the things that I learned along the way. So that's a few high level things, but some of the real powerful things that I think are available to all of us. And we can do this whenever, and I think we should. And I think it helps, and I know it helped me. So if there's any questions, I'd like to entertain those, because I do love Q&A, and I love to hear where you guys are at or what you think, and anything else you guys want to discuss.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Angus. We'll open it up for questions now. I know I've got one, and I'll give the coaches time to put them in the chat. Coaches, you can put your questions in the chat. And in fact, I encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity to do it. And added to that is, I think I have the option to unmute you if you want to raise your hand and ask it verbally as opposed to typing it in. Go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll see it in the participants, and then I'll unmute you and I'll let you ask your question the way you want it asked, as opposed to having to type it out. Hopefully that might be easier for some of you. But my question, Angus, is having to do with connections and communicating with the athletes to improve confidence.
Yeah.
And maybe you can give some specific examples, whether it's to increase confidence, maintain confidence, or recapture confidence, something that you've come across and the value of your connections and communicating with your athlete.
Yeah, okay. So I guess we walk through all three phases, because I had low confidence when I first met Dan in terms of my abilities to make it in this league. And so a couple things he did right off the bat was, again, he was the authority figure. He's my coach. So at the end of the day, we always talk about what matters is that you believe in yourself, which is great. But the truth is, we're looking for validation from somebody that we look to that has that type of authority. And it's going to be the coach. It's going to be you guys. The player's looking externally to understand, am I good enough? And so, I think this is the message on a larger keynote that I give when I come to conferences. But, Dan always gave me that message that I think some people hear from Coach Bill Belichick's quoted as now, but I heard this in 03 from Dan was, talent sets the floor, character sets the ceiling. And, there's a truth in our sport that you need X amount of talent to participate or to play or to be effective. You do. And I think Dan's big thing was that I'm here. I'm here at this level, so I have enough. So stop questioning that. Now it's about how much are you willing to give in terms of effort, and that's a controllable. So if you're willing to give your all, what he guaranteed me was I'll be the best version of myself. And I never doubted that. And he's the authority figure, so I didn't have to look elsewhere. And our workouts were really hard, and he pushed me very hard. And his big thing was, it wasn't about your ability to do the drill better than someone else. It was your ability to bring your best and finish it. His big thing was finishing what you start. And when you finished it, there was a build of confidence that I think he always told me that what separates the greats from the average is your ability to finish the task that you said and to keep finishing it every single day. And so, he taught me through my confidence was that what mattered was, are you willing to finish what you start? And if you are doing that, then you're separating yourself. And he's right on that in the real world. I mean, talent comes and goes, but most people quit. And so his big push on me was not about how great I was doing something. It was, are you finishing it? And that built the confidence that he kept reminding me, that's what's going to separate you. You'll still go when people won't. And that's when you win. And so he ingrained that a long time ago, that finishing was number one. And that's a choice. And he's going to make sure we finish. We're going to finish it together every time, all these crazy workouts we did. And that started building my confidence, because I saw other athletes around me not finishing. They were better athletes than me. And so he embedded to me that confidence came from committing and doing what you're going to do, not in just being better than somebody else. And that was what's going to win in the long run. And I put a 13-year career together by not stopping. But his big thing was, we're going to get this done. We got it done. And then he would drive me hard during the workouts. But then afterwards, just showered me with praise because I finished it. And he would be the first to remind me, most people don't finish things, Angus. Most people don't. And so he would always pepper me with that being the baseline of why I'm doing well, because I'm willing to finish what I started. And that's separating me from everybody. Because he knew I wasn't one of the top athletes as a lineman. I wasn't this gifted guy that had gifts, but I was going to make it because I was willing to commit more. And I think, if you install that in people, that gives them the ability to control their confidence. If you baseline it on, if you're going to do this, you're going to bring your all and you're going to finish it, and they choose that, then you praise them for that, and you shower them, because they can always do that. They can't always do it well. They can't always be great at it, but they can always finish it. And I think we all know we're trying to teach transferable skills. So the more you get people that are going to commit to something and get it done, the more you're prepping them for real life to win too, because most people don't finish anything. And so he baselined my confidence on him not allowing me to quit on things and reminding me that was maybe the most powerful separator of all. And then we built from there. And so when I was, when things weren't going well, and I was struggling sometimes, it got back to basic tasks and drills, and we're going to finish them. And that's what's going to, that was a controllable. It was always about the controllables. You can control your effort, and you can control whether you finish what you start. And we're going to do that again. Most people aren't. This is why you're going to do well. And we just get back to fundamentals, and it was always about finishing. It was about finishing what you started with the same amount of effort that you went into it, you come out of it. And again, it was harping on being great at the things you control, and that was effort and commitment level. And that was why my confidence was always in my ability to not do more than you, but to do everything that I'm going to do. And how good it was going to be, he always said, look, on any given day, we're not here. That's uncontrollable. And so he would anchor our confidence in our commitment to something and our effort level. And I think, again, there's a void with athletes. So if you don't remind them of that, they're going to drift back to comparing themselves against other people and not think they're good enough. So if you want to coach's job is to not allow voids to be created and gaps for players to fill it in. So you choose what you're going to choose in terms of anchoring them on something that they can believe in to build their confidence, but you have to remind them of it all the time. This is why they're good enough. This is why they matter. And I think it's something that should be controllable. And then you have to remind them every single time that this is what's important, and remind them after they do it, this is why you're going to do great. This is why you are great. This is why I believe in you. Again, the letters, Dan would never praise us for on the letters for our physical gifts or our pancake blocks. It was always our commitment this week, our effort level, our leadership skills, our communication, all things you control. And that's even in the weekly letters, he would remind us that's why we're great. That's why we're his guys. That's why we're doing well. That's why we're going to be great. And there were always reminders on controllables. And so you get praised for things you can control. You keep working hard on them. And I think confidence comes from knowing what it's going to really take, and what it really takes is those things. And it's your job as a coach to not allow a void for them to be confused on that. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's a good place to start for kids.
Oh, that's a great answer. Thank you.
There was another question. I think it popped up.
Yeah,
no?
You can pop it up in the chat if you want to read it yourself.
Okay. I run into lots of kids. I run into lots of times with kids that play the O-line. We run into players who are scared of being too physical due to being told to be nice as they are bigger than the other kids. What is one way we can get across to kids that football, this is okay? Oh, good idea. Okay, so I think the question is, we all know the truth here in today's world. A lot of people now, we're shunning overt physicality, and we're not as aggressive with our youth anymore. The whole world is not geared around physical confrontation at a young age. So it's unnatural, I think, now for a lot of kids to think that contact is good. And that's just where we're at in this world. So I can speak from being someone that's not wired as an aggressive person. I'm not someone that plays football because I like to hit people. That's just me. I played football because I loved the technical aspect. I loved utilizing the skill to beat someone in the chess match of it, in the art form of it, and the sport of it, and win. I never had any extra juice for driving someone deeper into the ground. There's nothing right or wrong about it, but I can speak to this because I'm not wired as a physical person. When I left football, there wasn't a gap in my life for contact. I loved the sport. I loved getting good at it. I loved working at it. I loved improving at it. But being physical for me, it was okay, but wasn't what I craved. So what mattered to me, and it depends again on the kid, and I don't know how much time you can spend on each kid, but you need to find out. Look, some people it's not for them. That's just bottom line. But most kids, they like something. There's an element of football that can draw many different personalities into it, and for some it's doesn't have to be contact, but it's just competitiveness of it. Some it's being part of a team, and if it's taking care of people and helping people, well, then you have to realize that this is a protector role, and it's not about, I never looked at it as about being violent to another person. It was about learning how to best utilize technique to move them out of the way so your players can win. And whatever language you need to use to try to find out what's going to let someone wrap their head around this as going, okay, I get that, and I want to get good at this. And again, what gets praised gets repeated. So, any way you can get a kid even out there at all and just praise them like crazy, because let's be honest, particularly on the offensive line, we're usually dealing with our marginalized kids, right? These are the kids that are, maybe a little heavier when they're growing up, maybe kind of an outcast, probably weren't the best athlete in class, maybe not the most popular kids. So some of them are a little shy, and a lot of them are a little introverted. And so, you find any reason to shower them with praise, I think they're going to be drawn to, again, feeling like they belong, feeling someone believes in them and feeling that they can. So, my big thing and why I was so lucky with Dan was, it wasn't about just go out and kick that guy's ass. It was about, okay, he's in a 3 technique. This is the technique we're going to master so you can block this person. It wasn't about killing the guy. It was just about, how can I do my job, and how can I care about doing it right and doing it very well, and what's it going to take to get that done. And I was kind of almost an artist in terms of studying that, or a technician of studying the how, rather than just loving the why I get to hit somebody. It didn't really do anything for me. So again, what it takes, I think football's changed a lot. Even when I played, it's not as physical either. It's a very technique and athletically based game now. But I think, let's move away from, this is about blasting people, unless you have that guy on your team. But even that guy, you probably have to rope in a little bit, because it's not just about that. It's about learning how to effectively and safely move a body to a different location so we can win a game. And I think the messaging has to be a little more technical than it used to be, because you're dealing with kids that aren't growing up fighting each other as much or hitting each other as much or doing this violent acts. And so it's about, listen, I remember how I got recruited in high school. It's about, listen, we think you can really help us, and we think you'll really enjoy being part of a group, and you would bring so much to our team in terms of what you can do physically on the field, and your personality would be such a great fit and part of this group. I think you're just gonna have a great time, and boy, could we really, really use someone like you on our squad. And then it's about, if it's offensive line play, it's about the technical aspects of this position that you get to learn to do to win the competition against another person, or however you're gonna do it. But I think we do have to get away from the generalization of hitting and just violence and steer it into a sport that's highly technical and athletic. And that's why we think you'd be great at it, because you're a great athlete, whatever they are, and you're a smart kid that wants to help a group win, and we need someone like that in our unit. I know it's a hard battle. I know it is, because I think the harder people to deal with are the parents. I think that's something you have to talk about. I think you have to have town halls with parents and understand what this game is really about, not what they see on the negative sports section. So I think the bigger push is with moms and dads now. I think we need more town halls. I think we need more ways to get mom particularly, because let's be honest, moms are the ones that make the household decisions now in terms of what the kids do. I think you need to get moms out, and we need to remind them what this game really is, not what they hear it is, because I think that trickles down to their children, and the messaging they get at home is going to be very powerful, what they're getting reinforced by the parents. So I think we need more of these conversations. That's why I did my TED Talk. I was wanting moms and dads to hear it, be like, listen, this is important because of these real reasons, not so your kids can just hit people harder. But it's a long time fight. I don't think it was a simple answer. Oh, okay, from Tom. Okay, love your message about building confidence in athletes. In situations where a backup player or underclassman beats out a starter senior position for the starting position, which happened in my grade 11 season. I was a backup that won the job in week 10 of my season. How would you handle that conversation with the player who lost their starting position? More specifically, how can you keep the player's confidence level relatively high? A great question, Tom. I lived this role. I didn't play football till the 11th grade. I was a bit of a bench warmer, but I improved throughout the season. I was defensive lineman. 2 weeks left in the season, I won the starting job over a senior, and he didn't start the rest of his 2 games of his career, and it was hard. The messaging came from the head coach, though, and I think he spoke to the senior privately, and we were lucky. He's a good, upstanding guy, and it was about, we were trying to win a championship, so we had a championship team, which double-edged sword, was going to be hard for this guy because he wasn't the starting player now, but there was a championship on the line. And what happened was he was really, really praised for all the work he's done, and almost begged by the coaches of the importance of him now becoming a leader to me and a leader to the team and filling in the gaps. And again, what gets praised gets repeated. So I think you have to find a way to message the importance of their new role to the team, and you can't fluff it. It has to be real. You got to find where you can utilize their strengths, whether it be in a new position, even on special teams, and you make them the captain of that team, or you have your leadership council group and he's part of that, or he becomes the mentor to the one that just beat him out. And again, that's a hard pill for a teenager to swallow, but it's in your messaging of why you need them to do this, and why this is why the team's going to win because of this, and its ability to message the vital need for them in their new role, and how they're the ones that are going to make the difference, and how you could never have asked for a better person than this one to be able to handle this difficult situation and turn it into a great situation for the team and for themselves because of who they are as a person. And you shift it to the greatness of them as a person. Again, you're not always going to win that, but I think that's the best way to approach it. You can't just make them deal with it. You have to step in again, fill the gap of where their emotions are going, and build it back up to how you have a new role for them. Everybody needs to feel that they belong, right? Rule number one, you need to feel that you're bringing value to the group. So you need to create a role for them now that is maybe even more important, at least perceived as more important. And then you have to praise it like crazy from the get-go, so they feel that they are just as valuable to the club as they were when they were playing the job. And you can be creative with that, but you can make people important any way you want, but you cannot just let them become the backup. You have to make them even something greater, whatever that may be. You have to do it, and I think you'll do better. You'll do better. You'll have a good shot. You'll have a good shot that way. I hope that helps. And you get creative with that. Get creative with that. I know with the Lions, we had what was called a captain's council, and Jarius Jackson was on that, and our starting quarterback never was. And it was considered the most important role in the team because that's who conversed on the real matters that happened behind the scenes. And we needed leaders on that team, not just best players. And there was a way for Wally to make sure certain people were on that weren't playing. And he was very sensitive, even at pro where you're getting paid, to making sure that each of us had a role that mattered. And he made sure he praised those roles, everyone on the team. Yeah. Anyone else before we wrap this up and help my wife with bath time with the kids here?
I'm taking one last look just in case there's any raised hands. I don't see any.
Oh, here's one. Can you describe how that council worked? Yeah, sure. So I should have read an article about this, but so what we did was 2010, our sports psychologist brought this to us, and he'd done it in the NHL for a couple of times, but I think it's powerful at high school level. I think it's great. So you have your captains, right? Your 3 or 4 guys that go into the coin toss and they do whatever. But we made a captain's council group, which was more like 8 or 9 guys, and had nothing to do with your talent as a player. These were people that were looked up to on the team, but they were people that weren't afraid to converse, speak their mind, speak open and honestly, and basically be the union rep for their position. So we tried to get someone from each position. There was an offensive lineman, there's defensive lineman, receivers had a voice, and it wasn't your all-star guy. It might have been, but didn't have to be. These were people that were comfortable managing the message. And what we did was each week we would meet with Wally, and so we would bring the concerns and the messaging from the locker room to him. He would bring back the concerns and the messaging from the coaches and management even to us. So again, there was no gaps. Players never wondered what the hell's going on up there, what are coaches thinking. Coaches are like, oh, what's going on in the locker room? I wonder what's going on. And it wasn't a snitch group. It was a way to build trust because everything was taken honestly and openly. And then we would bring back the messaging to our team of this is what's going on. So we didn't sit around going, what the hell are they doing up there? I wonder, do they even know what's going on? Why are coaches saying this? We knew. We didn't have the answers. We filled gaps. It filled all the gaps because we all know when gaps are there, negativity creeps in. And that's when little groups form and they start, coming up with their own little problems and complaining about the offense, and the defense complains about the defense complains about the offense, the O-line's complaining about the D-line, and the players are complaining about the coaches, and the coaches are whining about the players. Well, we had a proactive weekly meeting every week, and why it was so important we had the right people was things weren't sidestepped. We talked about real issues, and at the high school level, this would be powerful because your kids will actually be heard. As coaches, for a teenager to actually be listened to and say, look, this is what we're worried about. We're doing too much conditioning, too little conditioning, whatever. And you're actually going to listen and say, well, this is why we're doing it. Oh, I had no idea. They take it back to the team going, this was the bigger plan. So there's no secrecy and there's no wondering. And so we would converse all the time, and we were able to handle player personnel issues on and off the field. Some of our players are getting in trouble in the law. We dealt with that. It wasn't like, I wonder what management's going to do. We all knew what we were going to do. We were one unit, one team. We talked about it with them, and they talked about it with us, and we came to joint answers. So we didn't let problems fester and people complain about them. Every week it was brought up. And because we had a representative from every unit, there was no little micro problems. I knew what was going on with the O-line, and I could bring that to the rest of the players, and we brought it up to Sarah Wally, who maybe saw it from afar, but they didn't know what was going on. I want to say, look, there's problems. These guys aren't getting along right now. Okay, how are we going to deal with this? Now the coaches knew. So they knew when they saw it on the field what was really going on. And then we knew why we're doing this weird stuff at practice that we never saw before, because Wally had told us this is what we're going to be doing now, and this is why. And so we proactively manage problems by open communication. It's brilliant. I think at the high school level, it would be very powerful and very way for your young kids to grow up and learn how to talk openly about real things. I think that would be a huge life skill to transfer. There's a lot more to it, but that's kind of the overview. All good?
It looks like we're all good, Angus. I appreciate your time tonight. That's extremely valuable. So I'm glad you're able to come on and share some of your thoughts with us. Really appreciate it. We'll let you go and get to bath time.
Powerful. Love it, buddy. You can't, you know what? They talk about this home quarantine. I tell people, listen, if my greatest hardship is I got to spend every day at home with my family, I'm the luckiest man in the world.
Perfect. Thanks again, and have a great night, Coach.
See you guys. Thank you, coaches.